Hey, my name's Anna and I like to read, and in this video I'm going to be talking about books I read in May. So the first book I read in May was Just Mercy, and I listened to it on audio and I thought this was a fantastic audiobook and I think it was an important read. So it is by Bryan Stevenson, who is a lawyer, and he created a nonprofit organization called the Equal Justice Initiative, and this nonprofit helps prisoners who are wrongly convicted. So in his memoir, he talks about his first case, which was of Walter McMillan, who was wrongly accused of a murder, and how he helped him. And he discusses how unjust and corrupt our system really is, and I highly recommend this book, and especially the audiobook was really great. I really enjoyed how he narrated it. One thing I wanted to say is that it was a little bit confusing to follow along because he would talk about Walter McMillan and then in the next chapter he would discuss other cases, so it was a little bit hard to follow. But overall, I thought it was an important read and I highly recommend reading this book, and the audiobook was fantastic. So the next book I read was Date Me Bryson Keller, and I was approved for this e-arc through NetGalley, and I was really excited to read this. However, unfortunately, it was a very big disappointment. So this book follows Whye and Bryson, and Bryson is dared to date someone who asks him out every single week. He can't say no. So Whye is the first boy to ask him out, and Bryson starts to question his sexuality while Whye is closeted. This book had a lot of issues because the writing was flat, the characters didn't feel very developed, and the romance felt flat. Like, it was instant love. I understand that this was supposed to be over the course of a week, but it still felt very insta-lovey, and I just didn't like it. As Bryson started questioning his sexuality, it was just assumed that he was gay and not bi or pan, and that is just erasure, and I didn't really like that aspect of the book. So overall, this was a huge disappointment. The next book I read was Heartstopper Volume 2, and this follows two boys at a school in the UK, and one of them is gay and the other starts to explore his sexuality, and he discovers that he is bisexual, and they start dating. They were classmates and friends in the first volume, and then in the second volume their relationship grows. I thought this was a fun and adorable quick read, and I really enjoyed this graphic novel. The next book I read in May was Brave Face, and I read this as an audiobook, and the audiobook was fantastic. So in his memoir, Shaun Hutchinson talks about growing up gay in the 80s, coming out, his depression, his suicidal thoughts, his suicide attempt, him being diagnosed with ADHD. The audiobook was fantastic because he narrated it in such a raw and honest way, and I really enjoyed listening to it, and I definitely recommend listening to this memoir on audio as well. So the next book I read in May was Heartstopper Volume 3, and this follows Charlie and Nick and their classmates as they go on a trip to Paris, and this follows Charlie and Nick as they continue to explore their relationship and also their classmates and the relationships between their classmates. And it also portrays mental health issues, and it has a portrayal of an eating disorder, and I can't wait to read the next installment in the series to find out what happens next. And I actually forgot to say that I really enjoyed the art style in both Volume 2 and Volume 3. The expressions on the characters' faces feel so real. The art is really great in these graphic novels. The next book I read in May was actually a reread, and that was Check Please Volume 1. So this follows Eric Biddle, or Biddy for short, and he is on a hockey team, and this follows him through his freshman and sophomore year, and he is also a vlogger and a baker. So I thought this was a fun and quick, adorable read. However, I had some issues with it because I thought there were too many time jumps and I didn't like how it felt very episodic. I understand that this started as a webcomic, but reading this as a graphic novel, it feels strange because there are a lot of time jumps and I never felt connected to the characters because there were so many time jumps and it felt very episodic. Also, there was too much dialogue in some of the panels and that was very distracting. The next book I read in May was Check Please Volume 2. And just like with Volume 1, I thought this was a fun, adorable, cute, quick read. But I did have issues with this as well because I thought that some of the scenes were too short. I also thought that the dialogue in some of the panels was too much and it could have been split up better. And I just think that some of the scenes in this graphic novel felt very episodic and they could have been longer for me to feel more connected with the characters. The next book I read in May was The Perks of Being a Wallflower. So this follows Charlie, who starts high school and he writes letters to a friend. So while this is an important read because it portrays themes and topics and issues that are still prevalent to high school and to high schoolers today, I did not like the narration. I felt that at first Charlie read like a teenager. Then at times he read like a 8 or 9-year-old. Then he would say something profound and deep and it was very weird. Like, it didn't make sense that he would talk as a teenager, then he would talk as a little kid, and the narration didn't work for me, and I actually had to switch to the audiobook because I didn't enjoy reading this physically. I think this is an important read and I think it tackles a lot of important themes. However, I don't think that the narration is the best, and I understand that YA grew after this book. Like, we have so many more diverse books, although not as many as we should have, but we have more and books that tackle the issues that are explored in this book. But reading it now, there's outdated language in this book and there are some outdated themes, and I didn't really enjoy it overall. I thought it was all right. So the next book I read in May was Betsy Blossom Brown, and this was sent to me from the author. She contacted me via Instagram and asked me if I would be interested in reading this and writing a review for it. So this is a book about Betsy Blossom Brown, and it is a coming of age story, and Betsy Blossom Brown has Asperger's, and it is about her mother and her moving to another area, and it just follows her as she grows up. And while I thought that it was an interesting story and the illustrations added to the story and I thought the characters were interesting and well developed, I didn't like the shift from third person of view to first person of view. I felt it took away from the story and it made it pretty confusing to read at times, but overall it was an okay, interesting coming of age story. And the last book I read in May was American Born Chinese. So this follows 3 characters. One is Jin, the next is Monkey King, and the last one is Danny. And this follows them separately, but at the end the 3 story arcs actually come together. I loved this graphic novel. I thought the art style was great and I really enjoyed the story. I think it was very clever how the author put together the 3 separate story arcs at the end, and the end was very clever It makes you think about what really happened in the book and makes you reevaluate the plot and the characters and makes you want to go back to the beginning of the book. So those are all the books I read in May. What books did you read in May? Let me know down in the comments below, and let me know if you read any of these books in May or previously. And if you like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you in another video soon.